Kitco Mining's special coverage of the CIM Convention and Expo is brought to you by CSE, the Canadian Securities Exchange.
Hello, welcome to Kitco Mining. I'm Niels Christensen. We're here at the CIM Convention and Expo in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Joining me today to talk about graphite is Belinda Labatte from Lomiko Graphite. Thank you very much for joining us. We actually talked in October at the Explore conference.
We did.
Yes, and actually a lot of big news is coming out of that. But let's first, before we talk about your company, graphite is getting a lot more attention. Just the whole critical metals space is getting a lot more attention, a lot more than precious metals. Surprisingly, it feels like the tide is turning, and if we want electric cars, if we want smartphones, if we want all these gadgets that power our 20th century lives, we need graphite. What are your thoughts on, I guess, the growth of the sector and even the growth of your company?
Well, it's an excellent way to start the conversation, because we saw this going into Lomiko as a new team 18 months ago, that we were in fact in a new sector. It's energy transition. And it takes aspects of the mining sector, but we are about a decarbonization model that we are working through. So I find that what's happening now is a period of disruption as everybody's trying to establish what does energy transition look like. From a geopolitical perspective, it means that domestic minerals here in North America are going to be valued more than that same mineral overseas. That was not the case and is not the case for gold, because it's traded globally and it's processed in a different place than where it is actually extracted. Mm-hmm. So the geopolitical piece is different. The fact that we have to decarbonize our mines is also going to change the game, because we now have to look at energy intensity and scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And we're so well placed being in La Belle Provence with clean energy in Quebec. And then the third piece is, the Canada opportunity. We are the only country in the Western Hemisphere that has all these 30 minerals. Gold you can find everywhere. Not the case with these critical minerals. So to develop these resources, to move them from resource to reserve and into production, is a massive change in what's needed in terms of social acceptability, access to capital here in Canada.
So you were part of a panel discussion at CIM here. You're actually part of two panels, ESG and finance. I'd love to talk to you right now just really quickly about ESG, in that this whole, like you say, this whole green energy transition. And I guess my question is it recession-proof? We hear a lot of talk about, a slowing economy, but I'm sort of wondering, from your point of view, from the resource side of it, it doesn't feel like demand for graphite is going away. Demand for critical metals is not really going away, no matter sort of what the economic backdrop looks like.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think the thing to grapple with is the timeline. If we are going to have 100% EV sales in Canada by 2035, and right now the penetration rate of EVs is still less than 10%, the growth rate is fantastic. My condo, as an example, put in EV charging stations, and we got about 35% of residents, even those without EVs, to put them in. So what's happening is the demand profile for EVs is here for the long term. It's changing, which means that the demand for graphite is continuous, it's reliable, it's not going away. To your other point, though, which is in a recession, what does it look like to move these projects forward? And it's tough because the funds are still learning. Learning about each of these critical minerals, how to invest in the space. And there's less liquidity available for investors to put money into projects like this. And we might be needed and necessary, but there is a risk profile to get from a PEA stage where we're at to PFS and then to production. What we love, though, about our project is we have all the merits of an exceptional investment, from the ability to purify our graphite. The flake distribution is well over 60% fines, and we just increased our resource by 195% in the M&I category, in the indicated category. So what we're saying is that the long-term calculus economics of graphite is fantastic. Now we need to move these projects forward as we get out of this recession. I think it's going to be extremely exciting as we accelerate through the rest of this year in our projects and with investors coming in.
Does it help that you have really strong support from the Canadian government? They had a critical metals platform in their latest budget. Quebec provincial government has shown support for developing critical metals. How is this sort of helping to progress the industry?
I think Canada is going to shine in the world in terms of our ability to bring these minerals to production. So we have conversations not just with Canadian stakeholders, but our friends in the United States who want, and who in this year, in a very short period of time, assess that a Canadian critical mineral is considered domestic, which means they can fund graphite projects in Canada. So our point of view is we want to come with a climate success story in North America built by Quebec and Canadian stakeholders. And so yes, there's an incredible amount of support and momentum. But I would say that anytime you're transitioning your source of energy from, petroleum and fuel, which is a carbon-based product, to a high-tech type of system where you've got 30 different minerals to account for, it's going to take some time for the capital to be deployed. And we are here building a long-term business model that's sustainable, that's going to have a positive impact in the community. At least 15 years mine life, so we're excited.
I think this is actually something that we talked about in October as well. Just the idea of graphite. Is it are investors coming around to how important it is? So like lithium, and you guys actually have a lithium deposit as well. Lithium is an easy story to tell. Everybody knows about lithium. Even cobalt, to an extent, is getting a lot more sort of coverage. How does graphite fall into all of that?
Well, graphite is absolutely necessary in the battery construction, in the anode as a heat conductor, discharging and receiving the charge from the lithium cathode. And it's a heavy material, it's the heaviest component of the battery. So for some reason, it just has not received as much attention. And what we're seeing now is that the automakers are saying vocally, we want Canadian graphite. We want to change our reliance from the African continent into China and that position to something that is North America based, so that everything can be sourced and in North America and stay in North America. Now, why is that important? Because not just 2 weeks ago, the United States has already reduced the tax credits from a number of automakers. Why? Because their battery had materials sourced from abroad. So as an end user, my tax credit went from $4,000 to under $3,000 because the materials were not sourced, or the minerals were not sourced in North America.
Is that also? I'm wondering, is that also like a double-edged sword in that, part of the Canadian budget as well is restricting some foreign investments. Does that limit how much you can grow?
It's an interesting challenge, isn't it? Because we need capital, and we should access capital wherever we can to advance these projects. And at the same time, I think the restrictions are more based on not so much the investment, but is the end product, where is it going to go? If it stays in Canada and North America, that foreign investment should be deemed acceptable. And we simply have to do the work and reach out to strategic investors. And to your earlier point, these gold companies, they're very good miners. They've been in this business for a long time. There's no reason why a strategic such as a gold company can develop a vertical in graphite and see that 30% growth rate that we have that does not exist in gold. So I see them as very interesting possibilities as a strategic investor.
Well, and there's, from what I hear too, there's also growing interest from royalty companies to expand into, sort of these critical metals as well, to provide,
Yes.
especially when we get especially to the mine development stage where.
The thing that we need to recognize about critical minerals is we have a lot of resources, particularly in Canada. We haven't advanced them to reserve. Therefore, these royalty companies and many other investors need to come in earlier. It's really that simple. They need to come in at our stage of development where there's a high quality product, a solid team, a strategy, and the technical merits, and move them from resource to reserve. And we have sort of forgotten that piece of it, that we haven't developed our critical minerals reserve profile because there was no need to until now, because we want to have these EVs on the road.
So what does the mineralization look like? You guys actually had some really good, interesting PR, 55 new targets, I do believe, or...
Yeah, so let me highlight a few of the things from the graphite perspective. Lithium is early stage. It's wonderful. It's in northern Quebec. In the south, we just issued an updated mineral resource estimate where we increased by 195% our indicated classification from 28 million tons to just over 60 million tons, adding in addition an additional 20 million in the inferred category. And when you combine that with the existing work we're doing to characterize the graphite and ask the question, is this suitable for the anode market? We're showing a very high purity graphite, low in iron and ash and sulfur, very amenable to purification. And as I mentioned before, we have the fines product. So you can easily transform that into the SPG graphite. So those characteristics are strong, and we have acquired other claims. We are in a closing process for one project that we've acquired from Soquem, a Quebec group, who will remain as shareholders, showing their support for Lomiko. And that basically provides an ability to quarry material from smaller areas and claims and bring them to a central plant. It's essentially building that strategic stockpile of the resource in southern Quebec. And our intention is to be a neighbor and an operator of choice that's responsible and can properly organize its operations around the community and the seasonal traffic that exists.
So where are you guys then in your timeline? When does Quebec get its graphite mine? Like, are you guys on target?
Our timeline is that it's about 5 years for all the permits and the public consultation to occur, and we need the financing to get from A to B. We are on track. We'd like to get that PFS done by the end of the year, and that is our objective.
Fantastic. Belinda, thank you very much for coming on the show and talking about. It's just really interesting to see this trend of how critical metals, just the interest is growing. And again, it's like if we want, well, do you see are new investors coming in, like investors who haven't been in the resource sector because of the need for critical metals? Are you able to attract new sort of generalists?
Yes, I think there are the investors who are very keen to be part of the energy transition and decarbonization. And they see our valuation, they see our potential, and they say, this is where I want to place some of my capital because I believe in the vision, and I believe that over the longer term, this is going to be, a great investment. So I think that's really exciting, and we're open to meet with all kinds of investors who are interested in the energy transition, and encourage people to reach out to Lomiko, check out our website.
Perfect.
Send us a note.
Well, thank you very much. I really look forward to seeing how sort of the graphite market expands and develops in Quebec. So thank you very much for coming on the show and talking to us.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
And thank you for watching Kitco Mining. Stay tuned for more coverage from the CIM conference and exposition. If you like what you see, remember to hit the subscribe button below.
Kitco Mining's special coverage of the CIM Convention and Expo is brought to you by CSE, the Canadian Securities Exchange.